The resistance meeting disperses quickly as shift change sirens wail through the tunnels. Kira presses her palm against a seemingly ordinary section of rock, activating a biometric lock invisible to Coranx scanners. A narrow passage reveals itself, leading to a chamber where 24 resistance leaders from different mining quadrants have gathered. Their faces are haggard but determined, each bearing the characteristic pallor of those who haven't seen real sunlight in years. "The extraction rate has tripled in Sector 7, says Omar, a stocky man with burned scars across his neck from a processing accident. "They're not even bothering with safety protocols anymore." Kira nods, pulling up a rudimentary holographic display cobbled together from stolen components. "It's the same across all quadrants. I've decoded their latest resource projections." Her fingers trace lines of alien text that few humans can read. "They're moving to final extraction phase. Earth has less than 9 years before ecological collapse." Murmurs ripple through the gathered leaders. A woman named Dayu, who coordinates the child education centers, thinly veiled labor preparation facilities, speaks up. "We always knew this day would come. The Coranx strip every world bare before moving on." "But we're not ready," says a younger man named Elias, who manages to work in communications despite the hegemony's restrictions on human access to technology. "The network is still fragmented. We have caches of weapons, but nothing that can stand against their enforcers." Kira walks to a crude map etched into the rock wall, showing the solar system with hegemony installations marked in red dust. Ready or not, the timetable has changed. The Coranx are already preparing colony ships to transport valuable human assets to their next extraction site in the Ta-City system. The rest will be left on a dying Earth. The room falls silent. They've all heard stories passed down through generations about the early days of resistance, when millions died in failed uprisings. The Coranx response had been methodical and absolute. Entire cities turned to ash as examples. "We have one advantage they don't expect," Kira continues, pulling a small vial from her pocket. The liquid inside glows with a faint blue luminescence. Dr. Nakamura has perfected his formula. This compound enhances our neuroplasticity even further, allowing faster learning and adaptation. Their neural control implants can't compensate for the changes. Omar looks skeptical. "And this is supposed to help us against orbital cannons and enforcers." "It's not a weapon," Kira explains, her voice steady. "It's evolution. We distribute this through the water systems to every human settlement. Within weeks, the Coranx control protocols will begin failing. Their entire system relies on our predictability, our compliance. When that vanishes simultaneously across every mining colony, every processing center, every transport hub. Chaos." Dayu finishes, a thin smile forming. "Systematic chaos." A tremor runs through the chamber as a heavy transport moves through the tunnels above. Everyone freezes, counting seconds until the vibrations fade. "We'll need more than chaos," Elias argues. "We need coordination. Communications." Kira turns to face him directly. "That's why I need you to make contact with Commander Hassan in orbital control. His position gives him access to their quantum network nodes. If we time our actions with systematic disruptions to their communications, we could isolate each hegemony installation," Omar says, understanding dawning on his face. "Cut them off from Central Command." Kira nods. "Exactly. The Coranx rely absolutely on hierarchical instructions. Without clear commands, individual overseers don't adapt well to unexpected situations." As the meeting continues into the artificial night, Kira knows that many in this room won't survive what's coming. The path to freedom will be written in human blood. But for the first time in 3 centuries, it's a path that actually leads somewhere beyond endless servitude. In the dim light of their hidden chamber, a plan takes shape that will make the stars themselves tremble. After the Coranx commander leaves, Eli slumps against his laboratory wall, exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes. He has maintained his facade of compliance for 15 years, each day a careful performance of subservience while conducting his clandestine research. The neural implant specifications on his display would look perfect to any Quaranx inspector. The crystalline structure designed to interface with human brain tissue is exactly as ordered. Only another human neuroscientist would notice the subtle alterations to the connectivity matrix, changes that will enhance neural pathways associated with independent thinking rather than suppressing them. A soft chime indicates someone at his laboratory door. Eli quickly switches his display to authorized research and straightens his posture before calling. Enter. Maya Chen steps inside, her research uniform immaculate, carrying a tray of biological samples. As the door slides shut behind her, her formal posture relaxes slightly. 3 inspectors in the East Wing, she murmurs, her voice barely audible as she places the samples in the analysis chamber. They're reviewing all enhancement projects. Eli nods almost imperceptibly. The implant specifications have been approved. They're accelerating the timeline. Maya's hands tremble slightly as she arranges the samples. Unlike Eli, she hasn't spent years perfecting her deception. As a materials specialist, she was only recruited into the Resistance 6 months ago, when her research into waste processing accidentally revealed properties of discarded minerals that the Quaranx had overlooked. "How many can you produce before they notice?" she asks. 20 units initially. Eli responds in a normal tone while typing notes about the biological samples, a cover conversation for any listening devices. The Quaranx expect the first batch for testing in 3 days. In the reflection of his display screen, he watches Maya slip a data crystal into a waste receptacle, information about Resistance material needs disguised as contaminated lab equipment. Their exchange complete, she gathers her instruments and departs, with a respectful nod that any observing Quaranx would interpret as appropriate deference between human specialists. Once alone, Eli locks his laboratory and enters a sequence on his console that temporarily loops the surveillance feed, a trick he discovered when a power fluctuation once created a system vulnerability. He has exactly 7 minutes. From beneath a floor panel, he retrieves a sealed container holding his actual research. The neural mapping data inside represents generations of careful observation. Where the Quaranx see human brains as inefficient and chaotic, Eli has documented their extraordinary adaptability. Trauma that would permanently damage Quaranx neural structures merely forces human brains to create new pathways. Stress that would incapacitate the hierarchical aliens sometimes enhances human creative problem-solving. His latest breakthrough came from studying miners exposed to radiation levels that should have caused neural degradation. Instead, their brains had formed unprecedented connections, creating resilience the Quaranx neural structure couldn't replicate. The formula derived from this research doesn't just protect against Quaranx control. It accelerates the natural human ability to adapt. As his console chimes a 2-minute warning, Eli carefully records his latest modifications to the formula. The liquid in the sample vials has been adjusted to survive water filtration systems without detection. Tasteless, odorless, and undetectable by standard hegemony scans, it will spread through human communities within days. He seals his research back into its hiding place just as the surveillance system resumes normal function. Tonight, he will meet his contact from the mining colony, a maintenance worker with access to primary water distribution systems. The formula will enter circulation at precisely the moment the new neural implants are being prepared for mass production. The Quaranx believe they are creating a more efficient human workforce. Instead, they are about to face an entirely new human species, one whose adaptability has been weaponized against their oppressors. As Eli returns to his authorized work, he allows himself a moment of genuine hope. After 3 centuries of bondage, humanity's hidden advantage is about to be revealed. Jamal returns to his quarters after his shift, moving with practiced efficiency through the sterile corridors of Orbital Communications Hub Epsilon. His accommodation is Spartan by design. The Quaranx believe comfort encourages inefficiency. As the door slides shut, he maintains his rigid posture for exactly 30 seconds, waiting for the routine security scan to complete. Only then does he exhale deeply and allow his shoulders to slump. From a ventilation panel that shows no signs of tampering, he retrieves a small data device and activates it. The device creates a localized disruption field that will mask any unauthorized communications for 8 minutes, not long enough to be detected as a pattern, but sufficient for his needs. Connection established. A voice announces through the device. Encrypted channel open. This is Hassan, he responds quietly. The Rigel distortions have expanded to the communication arrays in Sector 12. Orcs engineers have increased power to compensate, exactly as predicted. The voice belongs to Dr. Imani Warren, a theoretical physicist working in a hegemony research facility on Mars. The additional power is accelerating the effect. Their algorithms can't adapt quickly enough because they keep applying the same compensatory protocols. Jamal smiles for the first time that day. They've tried the same solution 7 times now, with increasingly worse results. Yet they keep attempting it. That's their fundamental weakness, Imani says. Their neural structure excels at perfecting established solutions, but struggles to conceptualize alternatives. Our mathematicians have modeled the cascade effect. Once the network degradation reaches 17%, restoration becomes mathematically impossible without completely rebuilding the system. Current degradation stands at 11%, Jamal reports. The Orcs Engineering Division is attributing it to unusual solar activity. They've requested additional resources to strengthen the transmission nodes. A moment of silence passes before Imani speaks again. We're ahead of schedule then. Kira's team has accelerated their timetable. The formula distribution begins tomorrow. Jamal frowns. That's earlier than planned. The network disruption was supposed to coincide with the first behavioral changes from the formula. Circumstances have changed, Imani explains. Eli discovered the Orcs are preparing for final extraction phase. Earth has less than a decade of habitability left at current rates. This news sends a chill through Jamal, despite the perfectly regulated temperature of his quarters. He had suspected the accelerated resource shipments indicated something significant, but nothing this drastic. Then we need to increase the degradation rate, he says decisively. I can introduce more severe errors into the calibration data during tomorrow's maintenance cycle. The risk of detection is acceptable given the circumstances, Jamal interrupts. We've been preparing for 3 years. If we need to move now, we move now. His device chimes a 1-minute warning. Conversations must remain short to avoid pattern detection. There's something else, Imani says quickly. The mathematicians have discovered an unexpected vulnerability in the quantum entanglement process itself. The Orcs use a standardized encryption protocol across all communication nodes. Jamal understands immediately. If we can obtain the master key, we could potentially send false commands that appear to come from Hegemony Central. Imani confirms, but we'd need direct access to a primary communication node's core processing unit. Jamal glances at his workstation, where his security credentials rest. As a human assistant, his access is limited, but not as limited as the Orcs believe. Years of careful observation have revealed blind spots in their security protocols. I might be able to arrange that, he says as the device chimes its final warning. Transmitting updated timetable now. As the connection terminates and he returns the device to its hiding place, Jamal begins mentally mapping the communication hub's restricted areas. The Orcs have always underestimated human observational abilities, assuming their complex security systems would be incomprehensible to primitive minds. They never considered that a species accustomed to surviving under oppression would become experts at identifying and exploiting weaknesses in systems designed to control them. Maya carefully packages the sample materials into unassuming transport containers labeled Waste Processing Study 47B. The mislabeling serves 2 purposes: maintaining her cover research and ensuring the Orcs' automated scanning systems categorize the contents as irrelevant. She hands the package to Lynn, a maintenance worker whose route takes him through 3 security zones. Remember, keep it at least half a meter from any primary scanning node, she instructs quietly. The molecular structure is stable, but strong energy fields could trigger premature alignment. Lynn nods, tucking the package among other maintenance supplies. Rendezvous point remains the same. Unchanged. Sato will meet you at Junction 12. Maya turns back to her workstation as Lynn departs, maintaining the appearance of a dedicated researcher pursuing meaningless studies permitted by hegemony overseers. When her shift ends, Maya takes an authorized transport to the residential sector. Instead of proceeding directly to her assigned dwelling, she follows a circuitous path through maintenance corridors that appear on Orcs systems as radioactive zones requiring specialized protection, a designation her team hacked into the system years ago to create blind spots in surveillance. The hidden laboratory she enters bears little resemblance to the pristine hegemony facilities above. Equipment cobbled together from discarded machinery hums with unstable energy, and the walls are lined with handwritten calculations, paper being one technology the Orcs consider so primitive they don't bother monitoring its use. "You're late," says Imani Warren, looking up from a holographic simulation. "Did you bring it?" Maya removes a small vial from beneath her skin, a subdermal pocket surgically created to bypass security scans. Fresh from the processing center. Pure iridium dust from the asteroid belt refinery. They consider it a waste product because their purification processes can't handle the isotope contamination. Imani takes the vial reverently. Their loss, our gain. Their material science is advanced but predictable. They've optimized existing technologies rather than exploring alternatives. A door opens on the far side of the lab, and Sato enters with Lynn following behind. He carries Maya's package with exaggerated care. "Let's see if your calculations hold up," Maya says, taking the package and extracting the dull gray material inside. Under normal light, it appears unremarkable, similar to graphite but lighter. She places it on a testing platform as the others step back behind a protective barrier. Initiating energy pulse in 3, 2, 1. Imani activates the test sequence. A focused beam of energy, similar to standard Orcs weapons, strikes the material. Instead of absorbing or reflecting the beam, the material seems to channel it, redirecting the energy through microscopic pathways invisible to the naked eye. The energy disperses harmlessly across the surface before dissipating entirely. Perfect diffusion pattern, Sato says, studying the readings. No heat signature, no radiation trace. According to their sensors, the energy simply disappeared. Maya allows herself a moment of pride. The molecular structure creates quantum tunneling pathways that the Orcs weapons can't account for. Their energy weapons are calibrated for materials that either absorb or reflect. They've never encountered diffusion matrices like these. How quickly can we scale production? Imani asks, already calculating applications. That's the beauty of it, Maya explains, picking up the material. We don't need hegemony manufacturing facilities. The base components are mining byproducts, materials they literally throw away. And the catalytic process requires only standard water filtration equipment, which we have access to throughout the colony network. Lynn, who has remained silent until now, speaks up. What about offensive capabilities? Shields are good, but we need weapons. Maya exchanges a look with Sato, who retrieves another sample from a hidden compartment. This one is darker, with a faint purple sheen when tilted toward the light. The same principles that allow energy diffusion can be reversed, Maya explains. This variant doesn't just redirect energy, it amplifies it. A standard mining laser, modified with this material, can generate an energy signature 5 times more powerful than its original output. Imani's eyes widen. The Orcs won't be expecting resistance fighters with weapons that outclass their own, especially weapons made from what they consider garbage. Maya adds with grim satisfaction. Sometimes the most valuable discoveries are found in what others discard, including us. Sophia weaves through the crowded human market sector, her movements deliberately unhurried despite the urgency of her mission. The marketplace serves as the perfect cover for the Whisper network. Hundreds of humans engaged in rapid, overlapping conversations that Coranx surveillance systems flag as inefficient noise not worth decoding. She pauses at a produce stall, examining fruits while murmuring to the vendor. The river rises after the mountain trembles. Eastern Quadrant, 3 days. The vendor responds without looking up, passing her a small bag of dried berries. Winter birds fly before the storm. Confirmation received. This exchange, meaningless to any Coranx observer, has just confirmed that resistance cells in the Eastern Quadrant will be ready for coordinated action when the communications disruptions reach critical levels in 3 days. Sophia continues through the market, stopping at 5 more stalls to deliver variations of the message, each one specifically coded for different resistance cells. At the central water distribution point, she joins the crew of servants collecting daily rations for their Coranx masters. The woman ahead of her, Asha, serves in the household of Sub-Commander Vareth, a position that grants her access to mid-level hegemony communications. My master complains of signal disruptions in his morning reports, Asha says conversationally as they wait. He grows increasingly agitated with contradictory directives. Sophia nods sympathetically. Overseer Klarth has been unusually demanding. Yesterday he ordered a complete inventory reorganization, then countermanded hours later claiming no such order was given. This exchange confirms what they already suspected. The quantum network disruptions engineered by Jamal are creating confusion within the hegemony command structure. The Coranx, who have never needed to question the authenticity of orders from superiors, lack protocols for resolving contradictions. When Sophia returns to Overseer Klarth's residence, she finds him engaged in a rare direct communication with Regional Commander Tvek, their multifaceted eyes shifting in patterns that indicate agitation. She maintains perfect servant posture, moving silently to arrange the nutrient solutions exactly as required, while straining to overhear their conversation. Resource allocation inconsistencies cannot be attributed to communication errors. Tvek insists, mandible appendages clicking rapidly. Execute Redistribution Protocol 7 immediately. Previous directive specified maintaining current allocation levels. Klarth responds, his posture rigid with confusion. Clarification request. Which directive maintains priority? Questioning directives indicates efficiency degradation. Tvek responds sharply. Report to reconditioning upon completion of redistribution. The conversation ends abruptly, leaving Klarth in a state Sophia recognizes as distress, though few humans would detect the subtle changes in the alien's biochemical signatures. She has spent years studying Coranx emotional indicators, learning to read the species that believes itself beyond emotional influence. Later that evening, as she cleans Klarth's private chambers, Sophia carefully positions a data tablet where he will see it, apparently forgotten by another Coranx official. The tablet contains nothing suspicious, merely routine reports, but one section has been subtly altered to contradict the resource allocation orders. It's a small discrepancy, but for a species that relies on absolute consistency, it will create further doubt. This is how the Whisper campaign operates, not through direct misinformation, but through accumulated inconsistencies that exploit the rigid Coranx psychology. Unlike humans, who have evolved to function despite contradictory information, the Coranx experience cognitive distress when faced with logical inconsistencies from trusted sources. As Sophia completes her duties and returns to the human quarters, she receives a coded message through the servant network. Summer fruit tastes sweetest before the first frost. The weapons developed by Maya's team are being distributed tomorrow, hidden among routine supply deliveries. The whispers are becoming actions. When Klarth and other overseers realize something is wrong, it will already be too late. Their perfect hierarchy will be collapsing from within, precisely when humans are most prepared to strike from without. Lei Wei monitors the deployment of the microdrones from her command console, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. The drones appear as nothing more than specks against the massive Coranx installation, barely distinguishable from cosmic dust. Her executive officer, Rivera, maintains a constant low whisper as he tracks the installation's automated defense responses, or more importantly, the lack thereof. Primary scanner sweep complete, Rivera reports. No detection alerts. Drone Cluster Alpha has reached the communications array. Adhesion protocols initiating. Lai Wei nods, her expression betraying nothing of the tension coiling in her stomach. Years of planning have led to this moment. If the Orcs detect their presence now, the entire resistance timeline collapses. She glances at the other 5 vessels maintaining formation around her retrofitted mining ship. Each captain knows that detection means immediate destruction, yet they hold position with unwavering discipline. Cluster Beta approaching auxiliary power couplings, Rivera continues. Cluster Gamma targeting environmental regulation nodes. The ship's engineer, Xu, speaks up from her station. Captain, I'm detecting increased scanner activity near Sector 4. They may be running a diagnostic on the communications array. Lai Wei tightens her grip on the console edge. Hold position. Reduce thermal emissions another 15%. The ship's life support systems will struggle at this reduced output, but detection would mean death regardless. Minutes stretch like hours as the microdrones attach themselves to crucial systems throughout the installation. Unlike conventional sabotage, these devices don't damage anything. They merely intercept data and subtly alter it before transmission. Life support readings showing optimal function become critical failures. Minor power fluctuations appear as catastrophic overloads. Routine maintenance requests transform into urgent evacuation orders. All clusters report successful integration, Rivera finally announces. Data alteration protocols active. Lai Wei allows herself the smallest of smiles. Now we wait. The wait is shorter than expected. Within 20 minutes, alert klaxons begin blaring throughout the Proxima installation. Maintenance bays that had been dormant suddenly spring to life as emergency teams respond to phantom crisis. Operations centers that had been running skeleton crews suddenly flood with Orcs technicians attempting to isolate failures that don't actually exist. Hegemony emergency channel activating. Communications specialist Chen reports, her voice tight with excitement. They're calling for immediate assistance. Priority level 1. The communications intercepts confirm their success as distress signals cascade across the quantum network. The installation's commander is reporting multiple critical failures requiring immediate intervention. Better still, the installation's automated diagnostic systems are confirming these non-existent emergencies, their sensors compromised by the microdrones. Command is deploying reinforcements from these coordinates. Chen continues, highlighting 12 points on the stellar map. Red lines trace the projected courses of hegemony warships converging on Proxima Centauri. Each line represents defensive capabilities being stripped from other Orcs installations throughout human-occupied space. How long until the first reinforcements arrive? Lai Wei asks. Approximately 17 hours for the closest units, Rivera responds. The furthest will take almost 3 days to reach Proxima. Lai Wei nods, performing rapid calculations. That gives us our window. Chen, transmit the coded signal to Earth. The mountain has trembled. As Chen complies, Lai Wei turns to her navigation officer. Plot a course to Rendezvous Point Delta. Minimal emissions, maximum stealth. We have what we came for. The 6 ships begin their careful withdrawal, maintaining sensor-absorbing formation. Behind them, the massive Proxima installation continues its frantic response to imaginary disasters, its distress calls pulling hegemony resources from across the sector into a perfectly orchestrated trap. In her private thoughts, Lai Wei acknowledges what she cannot say aloud, that this mission's success comes at a terrible price. The resistance fighters on Earth will launch their assault against hegemony ground forces now stripped of orbital support, but casualties will still be catastrophic. Humanity's path to freedom will be written in blood, including that of many on this very ship once their role in the deception is discovered. But for the first time in 3 centuries, it's a sacrifice with purpose. As her ship disappears into the darkness between stars, Lai Wei whispers an ancient prayer for the dead who will fall tomorrow, and for the free generations that will follow. Blood trickles from a cut above Jamal's eye as he leads his team deeper into the command center's core. The initial breach succeeded beyond expectations. Nakamura's cognitive virus incapacitated the Korrank's command staff for 23 minutes rather than the predicted 17, giving the human strike teams crucial additional time to secure entry points. Now the hard part begins. Junction 7 secured, reports Annika, a former maintenance worker whose knowledge of the station's layout has proven invaluable. 2 casualties. Automated defenses are adapting to our presence. Jamal wipes blood from his face, leaving a smear across his tactical display. They're running pattern recognition algorithms. We need to keep changing approach vectors. The team reaches a sealed bulkhead separating them from the central processing core. Unlike the other doors they've encountered, this one features multiple redundant security systems. A standard assault would require hours to breach, time they don't have. Options? Jamal asks, studying the security protocols. Torres, their systems specialist, kneels to examine the door's control panel. The Korranks never expected humans to get this far. The physical security is impressive, but the authorization protocols have a vulnerability. What kind? Jamal asks, aware that reinforcements from other sections of the station are already mobilizing. They use a hierarchical access system, Torres explains. Each security level requires authorization from the level above. But with the command staff incapacitated by the cognitive virus, Jamal understands immediately. No one is available to provide override authorization. Exactly. In their rigid thinking, they never programmed a contingency for this scenario. The system is waiting for input from commanders who can't provide it. Torres connects a device to the access panel, uploading a simulation of Korrank's authorization patterns derived from years of covered observation. The door remains sealed, but a secondary maintenance hatch beside it clicks open. Maintenance access only, Torres says, disappointment evident in his voice. Limited functionality, but Jamal sees opportunity where others see limitation. Perfect. They'll expect us to keep trying for full access. Annika, can your team create a diversion at the main security hub? She nods, already understanding his plan. Give us 3 minutes. As Annika's team departs, Jamal leads the remaining fighters through the narrow maintenance tunnel. The passage is barely wide enough for a human to crawl through, designed for maintenance drones rather than personnel. For once, the Korrak's dismissal of human physical capabilities works in their favor. No hegemony security protocol would consider these tunnels a viable infiltration route. They emerge in a secondary processing chamber where emergency systems operate independently from main controls. The room is unguarded, another oversight born of Korrank's certainty that their primary defenses couldn't be breached. We have access to environmental controls and secondary communication relays, reports Wei, examining the systems. Not enough to seize control of the station, but enough to create chaos, Jamal finishes. Begin systematic shutdown of life support in security sections. Redirect emergency response teams to opposite ends of the station. And most importantly, transmit Nakamura's signal through the command frequencies. As his team implements these instructions, alarms blare throughout the station. On security displays, they watch Korrank's defenders rushing to address phantom threats, while actual human strike teams advance unopposed through now unguarded corridors. Elegant, Wei says quietly, watching the confusion unfold. They're so accustomed to perfect information and clear command chains that they don't know how to function without them. An explosion rocks the station as Annika's diversion team detonates charges near the main security hub. The display shows Korrank's forces converging on that location, leaving critical systems vulnerable. Phase 2 complete, Jamal announces into his communicator. All strike teams proceed to designated targets. Central Command is compromised. Repeat, Central Command is compromised. Across the station, human resistance fighters receive the signal and advance with renewed determination. The battle isn't won yet. Quarank's automated defense systems continue to adapt, and casualties mount with each passing hour. But for the first time, victory seems possible. The perfect hierarchical system that has oppressed humanity for centuries is collapsing, unable to cope with the unpredictable, adaptable enemy it has created through its own oppression. Kira studies the Quarank's delegation with carefully controlled emotions. 3 years of freedom have not erased centuries of oppression, and the sight of the towering aliens still triggers an instinctive tension in her shoulders. Yet here they stand as equals, or at least as entities forced to negotiate rather than command. The contrast between this moment and her days in the lunar mines seems almost surreal. Unity Station's main chamber, once the cold heart of hegemony control, has been transformed. The rigid geometric patterns favored by the Quaranks have been softened with elements from human cultures worldwide. Hand-woven tapestries from the Andean colonies, intricate wooden panels from the Nigerian settlements, delicate paper screens from the Japanese enclaves. These artifacts of human creativity represent more than decoration. They are a deliberate statement that humanity will not erase its cultural identity in victory, as the Quaranks attempted to do in conquest. Your proposed galactic charter is fundamentally irrational, states the lead Quaranks negotiator, Supreme Commander Vexel. Mutual cooperation between species of varying technological development is mathematically inefficient. Kira nods, having anticipated this response. Yet mutual destruction is even less efficient, wouldn't you agree? The Quaranks' mandibles click in what humans have learned is a sign of reluctant acknowledgement. 3 years ago, such insolence would have resulted in immediate punishment. Today, Vexel can only respond with words. Your species has proven. Unexpected, the alien concedes. But this proposal to share technological advancements with former subject worlds defies logical resource allocation principles. Instead of arguing, Kira activates the central holographic display. Coordinate maps of former hegemony territory reveal a pattern of human ships moving between worlds once kept deliberately isolated from each other. These are not military vessels, she explains. They are distributing medical technologies, agricultural improvements, and communication systems to species the hegemony deemed unworthy of advancement. Vexel's compound eyes shift rapidly, analyzing the data. A strategic error. You dilute your advantage by sharing technological superiority. Dr. Nakamura, seated beside Kira, speaks for the first time. That assumes technological hoarding is advantageous. Our research suggests otherwise. He brings up comparative development curves showing accelerated innovation rates among cooperating species versus isolated ones. When diverse cognitive approaches combine, solutions emerge that no single species could develop alone. The mathematical models predict a 16% increase in technological advancement rates through cooperation versus domination. This gives the Quaranks delegation pause. If there is one argument that might sway them, it is mathematical efficiency. While they may not value cooperation for ethical reasons, they cannot ignore data suggesting it produces superior outcomes. There is another factor to consider, Kira continues, directing their attention to a different display, showing resource distribution across former hegemony space. The Quaranks extraction model depletes worlds systematically before abandoning them. Our distributed approach creates sustainable resource cycles that provide continuous yields rather than diminishing returns. She zooms in on Earth, where regions once stripped bare for hegemony resource quotas now show signs of ecological recovery. What you saw as inefficient conservation, we recognize as long-term investment. Vexel confers briefly with the other delegates, their communication too rapid for human translation systems to follow. When the Supreme Commander turns back to Kira, something has shifted in its posture. Your proposals contradict established Quaranks governance principles, Vexel states. However, the mathematical models are compelling. We require time to analyze these projections independently. Kira nods, recognizing this as the closest thing to concession she can expect from the rigid hierarchy. Of course, while you deliberate, perhaps you would like to observe the practical applications. She gestures toward the viewing portal where Earth hangs in the blackness of space. No longer just a resource extraction colony, it has become the center of a new kind of interstellar community, one where dominance has given way to something previously unknown in the galaxy's long history.